Are you sure I can't help
Oh, no, thanks, honey.
No, your job is to relax. That is your #1 assignment, okay?
Okay, all right. I'm really gonna apply myself.
No, I was just joking.
I know you were, so was I.
How we getting along?
Great.
Great.
Typically, tragedy as depicted on screen has two prongs. First, it crescendos towards its apex and accomplishes this through emotional dramatization either via framing, music, or exaggerated physical acting that affords an audience the ability to experience internal feelings externally. Second, the action typically falls immediately after this emotional climax by providing resolution, absolution, or definitive disposition to what we just saw. This formula for presenting grief or tragedy is popular with audiences because it provides the narrative answer to anguish that our brains crave: closure. But if your life was a movie, consider for a moment its saddest scene. Did you nail that heartfelt monologue? Did you scream into the unforgiving void? Was Hallelujah playing in the background? Real tragedy is imperfect. Not just because the core event was itself imperfect, so to speak, but because the moments within the larger moment were also imperfect. Imagine this unspeakably sad scene from Marley and Me, but in a real, busy veterinary clinic. Feels different, right? The core moment is still tragic and affecting, but the ambient noise of business in the background is distracting and even detracting. The culmination of these conflicting elements is discomfort. It's awkward to feel the edges of grief presented against the blunt banality of distracting everyday life. It's also very, very real. This is the triumph of Kenneth Longergan's Manchester by the Sea, a film about grief as presented through several crystal-clear lenses of painful normalcy that offers little in the way of closure. Manchester by the Sea is a story that grants little reprieve to its cast of characters, a collection of New Englanders plagued by horrific misfortune and ill-fated circumstance. We watch some of these dismal events unfold while others are only implied. If presented by way of that classic two-pronged formula for cinematic tragedy, this film might have felt gratuitous and less effective. But the visual language of Manchester by the Sea instead feels balanced and raw, symmetrical in its heart-wrenching drama and moment-to-moment imperfection. Consider this scene between Casey Affleck and Lucas Hedges, where Lee tells Patrick that his father has passed away. Instead of allowing us in on the private grief that Lee and Patrick share during this difficult conversation, Longergan instead puts us in the place of one of Patrick's hockey teammates. Uncomfortable and almost voyeuristic as we strain to hear what's being said, all the while feeling the gut punch of kind of already knowing what's going on here. Shortly after this, we get this fantastic scene between Lee and Patrick as they pull up to the hospital to see Joe's body.
Want me to decide for you?
Let's just go.
What are you doing?
I just said let's go inside.
No, you said let's just go, and then you get out of the car.
Okay, I meant let's just go. Let's just go look at. What's your problem?
My problem is I could have ripped your fucking leg off.
Okay, I'm sorry I misused the English language.
This misunderstanding initially feels inconsequential and narratively off-key. Lee asks Patrick if he wants to leave. Patrick gives an answer that Lee misunderstands. Patrick steps out, the car lurches forward, both characters react to the disconnect. It's the kind of low-energy dissonance that might be played for laughs in something like The Office. But in this film, it's so effective because it jolts us out of a track of expectation, and the result is a palpable but realistic tension. Discomfort. Later that night, Patrick has a group of friends over, and while the group spends a nominal amount of time reminiscing about Joe and the boat, the conversation quickly devolves into a debate about the efficacy of Star Trek.
Star Trek's one of the classical pillars of modern entertainment.
Oh, yeah?
All right?
Yeah, tell me about Star Trek.
Yeah.
Enlighten me.
All right? I'll tell you this.
How long have I been friends
How you
with
doing, baby?
All right, it's enough is enough.
One of Patrick's girlfriends, Sylvie, reacts to the boys' untimely Star Trek debate.
Go ahead, ask
Star
Patrick.
Trek. All right,
I can't believe we're
Patrick.
talking about Star Trek right now.
After a moment of terse silence, Patrick reacts as well.
I like Star Trek.
Here we can feel the tension of the scene rising as Patrick's friends actively disengage from the monumental tragedy of their friend's father's death, instead more interested in BSing about Star Trek. Based on past films that we've seen about tragedy, Sylvia reacts as we would expect, by admonishing the boys for their lack of sympathy and uncouthness. But the moment concludes with Patrick also disengaging from grief. It's important that this doesn't feel like Patrick gasping for reprieve from the loss of his father. He joins in with one line and the scene ends. Later, during Joe's funeral, Patrick seems somewhat detached from the expected gravity of the situation. This in contrast to Lee's quiet anguish. There's no audible dialogue for the uncomfortable exchange between Lee and his ex-wife, Randy. We're watching tragedy unfold. So how does Patrick fumbling for a buzzing cell phone during the proceeding make the moment even sadder? We're given an answer to the central mystery of the film's first act in Lee's tortured flashback to the tragedy that has defined the last decade of his life. The loss of his children to a fire that his own carelessness brought about. It doesn't get much bleaker than this, and the moment is a real gut punch. Here's what shocked me the most about this scene. When I saw this scene, I laughed, very abruptly, and then I gasped. I was stunned at the inappropriateness of this gag occurring at this moment, a graphically tragic scene where two small body bags are carried out moments before from cinder and ash. And I laughed. And then I felt uncomfortable, and I finally got what this movie has been driving towards with every awkward exchange, every lingering misunderstanding or inappropriate laugh. Why shouldn't something stupid like this happen at the worst possible moment? Real tragedy doesn't always allow you the time for a well-placed Shakespearean monologue. It happens, often without warning, and it's imperfect, awkward, uncomfortable. Movies about loss and the consequences of tragedy come out all the time, and so many of them meet the central misfortune of their narrative with an equal level of hope by the end. Well, call me a pessimist, but if we're gonna keep looking grief in the face, I hope that we get a few more movies like this one.
I gotta run.
Thanks for watching, guys, and if you like this video, please leave a like, comment, and consider subscribing. It goes a long way towards helping me out. More film stuff to come.